Mexico, and we're joined by an illustrious team of CEOs and C-suite executives who are going to today do a little bit less selling of themselves and talk to us as investors about their experience in Mexico and what we as investors need to understand and may benefit from knowing. So welcome, gentlemen. Okay, we're going to start with the first question, which is a nice simple one, nice layup, but it's going to allow us to have an interesting conversation in a few minutes. And that would be, I'd ask each one of you to give Mexico a score out of 5 for how they treat you as mining operators in the country, and tell us why you've given it that score.
It's a great question that you're making, and that was prepared to start this panel. It's a difficult one too, because I think you have to start ranking on a number of dimensions, and I think Mexico does very well on some, but we have challenges on others. So I'll start where I think we have the best, and that's on the geological potential, on the exploration maturity of the country. I think we're still at a very early stage in the country's exploration maturity, and still have potential to find many great deposits. We do have the skilled labor that has been increasing in latest years. We do have as well the ability to work all year round. I think we have Matt joining, and I think we also have the ability to do things within a framework of law that works. So on all of those aspects, I think we have high marks. Where we have the challenges are, number one, I think, on insecurity. That's been a worry for all of us in Mexico, and then there are definitely regions that are more insecure than others. On as well the agility that the direction of mines has been having, we've been really slow there on just the general administrative procedures that are important to get a mining industry going. On legal certainty, I think that's one aspect that we'll hear continuously. We have a number of challenges there. Things like what's going to happen to the mining fund, the being able to respect agreements, etc. So I think I don't want to overextend my time here, but I would assign it 3.5, and I almost want to give it a 4 because I see the potential. But you have to be very specific on geographies and regions, and I do believe we have some serious challenges to undertake, and I'm sure we'll explore more in depth in the next participations.
Yeah, so I think I was thinking, and I had a very similar conclusion to Alberto. I came with a score of 3.8, and the sort of my reasoning for it was my experience of spending the last 10 years going to site visits all over Mexico is, it's very early in terms of exploration. The potential is just phenomenal. The Spanish explored it actually quite intensely for centuries, and that gives you a wonderful footprint and head start. In addition, you don't have, especially in the north, a lot of the setting is semi-desertic, so you can see a lot of it from satellite. Really a wonderful place to do exploration, and I agree 100% with Alberto. The risk is how to sort out the security situation, and of course the whole situation with the government. But it's obvious by the fact that so many Canadians prefer to explore in Mexico than in Canada, that obviously they prefer to deal with the lack of security than with the Canadian government. So that, I think, says a lot, and that's how we came to 3.8.
3.8. Well, okay, well, we'll come back to that in a second. So that's Jorge Monroy from Rayna Silver, for those of us watching and listening to this. Same question, please, to Robert McDonald. How are you?
Very good, Matt. Thank you very much. And thank you to the Mexican Mining Forum for inviting me on this panel. Again, I agree largely with both Alberto and Jorge in terms of Mexico as a jurisdiction, there are clear advantages. Again, there's the ability to find large deposits, immediately adjacent to highways, like our current project at Cerro Las Manitas. So the exploration potential is very, very high, and then makes it very, very attractive to for miners and explorers to come in here. There are challenges, however, and whether those be the social challenges, dealing with local populations in Ejido, and there's also governmental challenges in terms of surety of tenure, as well as the speed at which staking claims or reducing claims, and that administrative aspect of managing your property portfolio. But I think in terms of our group, we continue to manage to deal with this in part by being aware of where we want to explore, of the jurisdictions that are favorable for exploration and hopefully for ultimate development. You want to make sure that you have the proper and experienced people in place, such that they see these issues and get out and at least try get out in front of potential issues that come down the road. In those respects, we've had largely positive experiences working in Mexico, and Southern Silver is a company that's been active in Mexico since 2005, and a number of the people that work with the company or behind the company have been active in Mexico since the 90s.
Great.
So
Rob, I'm going to have to push you for this number because I want to have a more interesting conversation with you in a second. So give us that number.
I think around 3.5 then. Sorry.
3.5. Yeah,
3.5.
Building a picture here, folks.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would remind people that once they've listened to this panel, do go and explore the Mexico Business Publishing Group have put on a fantastic session here, and the website's great. So do go and book yourself some meetings as well, or go and listen to some other panels. Doug Cavey, how are you, sir? Do you want to, from Defiance Silver, let's hear your version.
Fantastic. Thank you, Matt. I'm doing well, and pleasure to be on this panel. I'll start with my number now. I think I'm going to give Mexico a 4. And one of the big reasons for giving a 4 is that we have had tremendous business success for our shareholders, and our shareholders and stakeholders, I'll talk about the shareholders first, have been able to make a profit off of investing in Mexico. So as a business case, it makes sense to invest here. Mining in Mexico for stakeholders, whether it's ESG or whether it's mine development or the components about it, have made leaps in the last 10, 15 years in terms of their direct community investment, their training, and what they are largely doing. And Canada is a global leader in doing this. And what we're taking from what we know about developing projects and indigenous relations and community relations and training is being brought into Mexico on a large scale. And so for the Mexican mining industry, what mining is doing as a business and a business case is being seen regionally. Now, I know David Jones will speak about this in the parts of Mexico he's working, but because of the success for shareholders and the business growth opportunity, that has developed a highly skilled workforce here, especially when it comes to technical skilled workforce. We have a very gender diverse workforce in Mexico. We have very highly trained engineers and geoscientists to draw from, and they're Mexican nationals and they're proud to work here. Mexico has a strong cultural understanding of the role that natural resources play in the economy of the country, and that's echoed in small communities or large communities as well. Now, the infrastructure development does lend favorably for a number of projects, but there is still regional variability. It's a huge country that's very regionally diverse. So there is, some places that are great for development, some places are more challenging. But then that comes with all these regional challenges. There's security challenges, there's ESG challenges that are very specific and very related to certain parts of Mexico. Some feel it more, some feel it less. There's permitting challenges right now, and again, that's very relative to where you are working in Mexico. And there's a lack of clarity with the government and government outlook of tenure security, of what the licensing situation is going to be. And there's honestly a lack of government clarity on what the support for mining is over the next 10 to 15 years. But there is a business case for opportunity in Mexico, and there's a business case for our previous shareholders, and so I'm giving it a 4.
Fantastic. Okay, well, look, I'm going to ask this question to one more person, because I think it's enabled us to have a much more intelligent conversation about what needs to happen next. So, Dave McKinley-Jones, I think it's time for you to step up and share with us your thoughts.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for your great work in putting this together. I really appreciate it. I won't waste too much time applauding, but applause to all of you. Okay, I'm going to cheat on my first question. I'm going to set a precedent and cheat. I'm going to give different rankings very quickly. And I'm going to do it in decreasing order. I'm going to start with opportunity. That gets a solid 5. And I'm doing that from the sense the potential is remarkable, relatively underexplored in many parts of the country. So that gets a very solid 5. And that overcompensates for all of the subsequent lower ratings, okay? And I'll get into that later. Okay, social issues, people, I'll give that a 4. The people are wonderful, they're welcoming, they're genuine, they work hard, and we always have a great relation with local people, even if they don't agree with what we want to do. They're good people, and I give the people of Mexico a 4. They say they're the happiest people in the world, and I believe that. So moving down the list, I'm going to go down to security. Well, let's be honest here. Security, to me, it just occurred to me now, it's a quantum function. So on any day nothing bad happens to you, it's a 5. On a day something really bad happens to you, it's a 0. So what's the rating? Well, is it a Schrodinger's cat kind of thing? And I really mean that you don't know until you look at it. And so I'm going to give it a 2. I worked years in Guerrero, and we all know about Guerrero. Now I'm more in Oaxaca. So I'm going to give it a solid 2, and that's on a typical day. Now, going down to the lowest ranking, I'm going to give regulatory issues a 1.5. And let me just tick off what those are. Getting legal title, very problematic to impossible right now, owing to the new administration's stated and restated formal position, which is, as we all know, extra legal. Semarnat, especially in southern Mexico, has taken in Oaxaca, effectively a block everything they can. And Fortuna Silver and Gold Resource Corp could speak to that. Even if, for example, man-portable rigs, we have all, as an environmentalist, I use only man-portable rigs now. No roads, man-portable. But you still have to do a 9-month environmental impact statement on an area that has been clear-cut by either grazers or loggers. But we have to do an environmental, or if they're maguey growers, they just bulldoze the entire countryside, grow maguey for mezcal, which is great. I mean, more power to them. I like mezcal. But we have to do an environmental impact statement to use a man-portable rig while the countryside is being bulldozed. Okay, so regulatory, Semarnat, problem, MIA's problem. Federal Electrical Commission now, CFE, now has veto power on any issuance of new titles for electrical corridors. So that gets dumped into the CFE agency. You may never get title because they may never decide. That is a huge problem. Finally, indigenous consultations, what are they? Nobody knows. There are no regulations, there's no law. So if they say you have to do one, how do you do it? Finally, SAT. SAT's a huge problem in this country because basically they expropriate business funds and you spend as much money trying to get them back as you spend, generating taxes. So that's it. So I agree with everybody, 3.5 to 4. Opportunity trumps all. If you don't have anything, you'll never fund a deposit.
There you go, David. I appreciate that. And I think some of those topics will rear their heads again. And sorry, and apologies to Jean-Marc Staud. I admitted you at the beginning. Please take this chance to give us your thoughts as well, please.
Well, it's great. I think for me, Mexico, as everyone has talked about, has this great potential. And I think currently we're in a low. I think if we look at doing business in Mexico, we've been working in Mexico for over 20 years, and it was very good, but it has been decreasing its effectiveness, the ability, and we've noticed that mining companies operating in Mexico have chosen to move outside of Mexico as they've grown their business. I hope, as we see the great potential in the next years at the federal level, it'll be good again. So if we give a score currently at 3, where we'd like to be back at 4 and where we've been at 4 and 5 in the past, but right now with 3, because without getting permits, with all the challenges, without getting clear title, without the ability to develop mines, the investors are quite concerned. And we definitely see that we've been previously a 4, but right now we're really struggling and at a 3 is my opinion. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks, Jean. Thanks for keeping it so concise. Now we've got a couple more, well, 3 more questions coming up. I want to keep this one about federal government if we can, because it's going to be easy to stray into the realms of what you also need to do at the municipal level. I had a conversation with Jose Caballero from the Ministry of Economy a couple of months ago. They talked the language of making a lot of promises to miners. They talked about ability to provide security services. They talked about the desire to put the permitting and licensing process online. What is the reality on the ground? And Alberto, I'll bring you in.
Sure, thank you, Matt. Well, yes, we've been having these conversations with the federal government for a while. Unfortunately, we had an Undersecretary of Mining who was very active and really, really proactive. As I don't think we had seen in many years, but he has left. That position has been removed, and we are very sad to see that happen, because obviously we feel that that could be slowing down the progress on digitizing the direction of mines and doing these other efforts. We have had some conversations with Jose Caballero, who you mentioned as well. We hear they're making progress. We hope that this administration will be able to pull it off, because during the past administration was something that we were hearing about that was going to happen and didn't happen. And really, we sorely need it in Mexico. We really need to digitize and expedite all the administrative procedures in Mexico so that we can do business much more quickly, because our system is currently, honestly, back in the 70s. It's all paper-based and needs to be digitized right now.
And okay, I'll leave that there. Doug, I'm going to bring you back in. I'm going to mix the order of play up here, if I may. So Doug, what are your thoughts on your experiences?
Thanks. I really want to echo with Alberto in digitizing the space that we work in and catching up with the rest of North America in land acquisition, in clarity of title ownership, of really creating a digital database. Currently, the federal government, because of the removal of the position of mining subsecretary, has become this place that is largely unresponsive. And when they are, it is there's a lot of litigation that is required to understand various components of title, various components of land access. And it requires oftentimes legal or moderators, and that can be cost prohibitive for a small company that is looking to advance it. It's maybe less cost prohibitive for a larger company, but still the cost is quite high to communicate with the federal government, which should be a government that's in place that's promoting economic investment in the country, and it should not be cost prohibitive to reach those agreements.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to come back to Robert, if I may here. Robert, could you also add what is your experience of with federal government in this context? Because are they engaged? Do they get out to site? Do they care?
At this point, I mean, we actually haven't had a lot of work and experience with the federal government. We've spoken to state authorities. You know, we of course do our proper permitting and with Semirnat, and there have been some visits out to the property to review some things, sometimes on adjacent properties where there's been incidents. But I mean, largely we haven't had to deal with the federal authorities on any great level, other than the Semirnat permitting. Which has gone relatively smoothly. Initially, we had people working on the permit that weren't drafting them in the proper way, but then once you know, you bring in somebody local who knows those individuals, so it becomes a very individualistic or specific sort of a site specific sort of exercise. Whereas again, if things moved onto the digital framework, well then there would be a set protocol that could be followed throughout the country, and it would make things a lot easier to progress.
Great point. I'm going to evolve the questions slightly just to keep it a bit more lively for those listening in. Jorge, what does the federal government need to do better with engaging with miners, explorers, developers, or producers?
Yeah, I mean, I think even just going back to the way that it was in the previous administration would be a big step, because we did have better access to like databases, a lot more promotion, a lot more engagement. There is already a very interesting framework, like essentially through the free trade agreement we have with Canada, that gives you a certain level of protection already as an investor, as a Canadian company working in Mexico. And I agree with the comments that other people have done, where it's become quite difficult to have direct contact with the federal government for mining. It's the Mexico is right now in what they call an austerity. I think the term in Spanish is austeridad republicana, which translates to Republican austerity, but basically meaning trying to save money at the federal level. As a result of that, they eliminated the undersecretary for mining, who was really a champion for mining companies, speaking on the industry's behalf. So I think hopefully the federal government sees how important that role was and gets reinstated. He was somebody who came from the industry and was helpful to companies. And then again, like the databases actually do exist. They do have, and they used to be available. They're no longer available. So they have, I think, don't know if it's 100% on purpose, but they don't have a great interest for making it easy on mining companies. And it's not very clear what the future looks like. We're all hopeful that they may see the importance and the amount of jobs that mining creates and the importance to our economy. That's yet to be seen. And I think from the mining industry, for all of us, it's very important to be very vocal and try to make the government understand the importance of all the topics that we've discussed over the last few minutes.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Jorge. Jean-Marc Stout of Riverside Resources, if we put you in charge for one day, what would you be changing?
I think I definitely understand that the communities want mining. And so I would actually, at the federal level, try to make the information available. I think that we do embrace ESG. I think we are trying to do things in a favorable way. And the companies that work in Mexico work internationally and embrace those changes. And I think we can make a really great future. So I would make available the mineral titles, because if we can give mineral titles, we can give up other ground. We're not trying to sit on ground. We're trying to develop it. I think we're trying to create jobs. Everyone has always worked environmentally consciously. So if we can actually speed up that process, I think it'll create a great future for Mexico and put it back to be a 5, where it always had been in the top 5 of the American Heritage list of top companies when we began working here in the early 90s.
So they've gone backwards. Okay. David Jones, we heard Jorge. He says you need to be more vocal. Have you been vocal?
My apologies, sorry. My response was, what do you think? Okay, so yeah.
That's why I asked.
Have I been vocal? Yes, I try to be very direct. I try to be as open as I can, but the short answer to that at the federal level, and this is from an exploration point of view, specifically Oaxaca, Guerrero, Morelos, Puebla. What has the federal government been willing to do to engage to help us? The short answer is 0, nothing. The attempts that we have made to approach them at the mines office have been essentially been met, to be honest, with a lot of very happy talk and no action, no assistance, just platitudes. And I understand it's a difficult position for them to be in, especially with the current administration's stated point of view. However, I would like to give great plaudits to the state officials in Oaxaca who have been outstanding, absolutely outstanding. Wonderful people, very helpful, pro-investment, pro-mining, or pro-responsible mining. And but federal level, and I think the federal, understandably, the federal agencies respond more to revenue generating projects. And those of us trying to bring something from nothing to a mine, essentially we do not exist. And I hate to say that, but it's the way we're treated. We're treated as if we're just somebody to say, hi, nice to meet you, see you. No help, none.
Okay, well, we're going to come back to this. I want to move on to ESG because that, I think, allows some of you to talk about some of the things that you're doing. So you're guests of the Mexican people, the Mexican government. What are you doing for them? I'm going to put that to, crikey, Alberto. Let's have Alberto on.
Thank you, Matt. Well, I'm Mexican as well. So whatever we're doing for myself, my family, my extended family, which tend to be large in Mexico. I think the mining industry in general in Mexico, whether it be from Mexican investment or foreign, has been doing a really good job, particularly at the operations, at the producers level for a number of years. There's a number of initiatives, but I think it all starts with purpose. All of these companies really, and I had the Sonora mining cluster, so I have a lot of interaction with all of these companies. And we know that there's a lot of efforts to not just have small community programs, but to think in the long term, what's going to be the route to living a sustainable economy around communities, particularly once that life of the mine ends. Where I think we have a larger challenge is in exploration, and here we have exploration companies. And I think we have to make a different effort and not just explore for the geology and for the mineral deposit, but also at that early stage to be looking at what opportunities we could have in improving the environment, the relationship with the society, and even strengthening those relationships with government for a very early stage. It's a very important point in time in a project's development, that exploration stage, to set a very strong base to move forward.
Okay, thank you for that. Again, just slightly evolving the question. If Doug, I'm going to come to you. You're definitely not Mexican. You are coming from outside. You are a guest. How hard is it for an explorer who perhaps doesn't have the money to do the things that they perhaps feel that they should be doing to win over the locals? So what does ESG mean for explorers?
For us, ESG, as a Canadian working in Mexico, and I am ever grateful for the opportunity to work here because I love working here and I love this country, and the people here are beautiful. Really good, really warm, friendly, as Alberto said, very much an extended family. With respect to what we're doing and with what can be cost prohibitive for small companies, and this is echoed across the industry, whether it's in Australia, whether it's in Canada, US, is what does ESG mean? And what are the benefits for small companies? What are the benchmarks? What do we need to do? What we see as the opportunity as a small company is in gender diversification of our workforce, of indigenous consultation. And that's really important for Canadians because we have a somewhat of a parameter of indigenous consultation and what that means. And that consultation can actually be echoed into just community consultation, where you need to have prior and clear informed dialogue with the communities. And in the end, you need to have consent to work in those communities. And that isn't too cost prohibitive. It means reaching out to having specific people that understand how to work within that specific community. And that's what I think that Canadian-Mexican business alliances do provide, is that we do come into this with this understanding of what ESG means for Canadian explorers and developers, at least in my experience in British Columbia. What does clear and informed dialogue mean, and what does prior clear and informed consent mean? And that is at the Supreme Court level in Canada. So we're bringing that and working in Mexico with that. But as a small company, well, as a explorer developer in Canada, or in Mexico, what are we doing? One of the key things is this awesome gender diversification of our workforce. Our workforce, senior technical workforce, is 50% mixed gender across the board. We're trying to increase that as much as possible. And just having this outreach program where we're speaking with the communities affected by our operations, and it isn't cost prohibitive for small companies to do that. Once you grow, it does become unclear what needs to be done and what are the guidelines and parameters that are in place. And that's globally felt around the ESG industry. There's no benchmark ESG yet.
Okay, okay, thank you for that. Jean-Marc, can I come to you? Again, just changing the question slightly, is there a danger of companies coming from outside of Mexico into Mexico and imprinting their version of what they believe ESG looks like, and what damage could that cause?
Yeah, there definitely, we always have to be so important with culture, and Mexico has such a rich culture. My father was born in Mexico City. I grew up in Riverside, California. And when we go into Mexico, we have to adapt to that culture, but also there are challenges in that culture, in the Mexican culture sometimes as well. And so we can go and blend and bring in new things. So we definitely do have to adapt, and we want to make sure that we really welcome and work with everyone. It never works to come in and bring someone's foreign culture. And I think anyone that tries finds eventually it just isn't working. We work with all the local communities and all the projects we work on. I think all the companies do that. And whenever we try to impose something, even coming from outside as a big city, when we're going to small communities, we really want to realize that we're helping schools, helping with the hospitals, helping the community. And that really is the place that they begin to appreciate the cultures. And no, we don't try to change the culture. We try to adapt to it. And no, we don't try to bring our culture, but we do try to bring our skills of cleanliness, try to bring our skills of doing everything environmentally quite competent. And we also try to bring education. Knowledge is golden. Try to help teach and leave a better place.
Okay. Leave it better than you found it. Very good. Jorge, now you're a bit, I know you're an international man of mystery, but you're also a local. So are you able to use that to your advantage when dealing with locals?
Yeah, I mean, of course, but it's I had to say I'm very humbled by by people like Doug, John Mark. I actually, it's the first time I've ever met David Jones, but obviously I know his work. And I'll be honest with you, as a local Mexican, I have an immense amount of respect for what Canadians have brought to the country, because in the early '90s, before NAFTA was signed, it was mostly the big Mexican oligarchs controlled mining in Mexico, and as NAFTA was instated, there was a flood of Canadian companies that came. And Bay Street at the time thought, if the Grupo Mexico and Frisco haven't found it, there's probably nothing left here. And surprise, surprise, the Canadians brought their skills, 100 years of mining and exploration, and also an incredible entrepreneurial spirit. Look at somebody like Doug, who's living in Zacatecas, Mexico. It takes, you have to respect this, because even Mexicans won't take that kind of risk, either moving to the kind of places where you have to move to do exploration, or even putting your capital at risk. So I think, as a local Mexican, rather than feeling like I have an edge as a local person, I actually feel tremendously humbled by what Canadians have brought to the table.
Okay, we'll take that. And I'm going to hand over to David again. So David, we're going to just finish with you on this point, which is ESG is important. Do you find it frustrating that you've got to bother with something like this when they can't even get the basics right for your business? Because you've laid out a few things which they're not doing for you.
Sorry. Okay, first of all, no, emphatically, no, it's not a bother. A fundamental point to me about ESG, formal ESG, is that that's a luxury really that you have when you move into a framework of a successful project that's moving forward. When you do what I do, which I've decided to focus exclusively on finding new things starting from the ground up. But my philosophy is very simple, and it really is, it's ESG from the beginning. We are guests. We are guests. Anyone who works with me, the first thing I explained to them, I said, remember, we are guests. They decide if we can stay, work. So treat everyone with respect. Talk to everyone, be open, be as open as we possibly can. Don't hide things. And most importantly is constancy. Be consistent. Always follow through with what you say you're going to do. Always. There's a tendency for junior companies, particularly for people who are not from Mexico, to get involved in projects, promise things, and then the money runs out and they walk away. And then the people understandably feel as if they've been let down. Do not do that. Always follow through. Even if you down to your last penny, if you said you paid for the holiday fiesta, take it out of your own pocket and pay for the holiday fiesta. These are our friends, our neighbors. They live here. Okay. So also conveying to local people, partners, we're partners. I always tell the communities, look, we have nothing without you. This has to be a win-win. If you're not with us, we don't do well. And if we're not with you, you won't realize the benefits. We are partners from day one, mutual respect and consistency and attitude. And mining companies, I try to explain them. I saw Los Filos go from absolutely nothing into being a mine, which is a mind-boggling experience, really. And I can say nowhere in the world, I tell people nowhere in the world, or in Mexico anyway, has any community gone from being so destitute to being so wealthy in a confined area where they had absolutely nothing. And it's a remarkable thing. And I think conveying to communities what they can benefit from that, very important. Also, the problem with ESG in a formal manner when it gets into the government regulatory realm is that when it becomes an impediment, when there are blockades, essentially the ESG policies or blockage becomes self-defeating, because if you can't work, if you can't realize success, there will be no ESG. There will be no support. So letting that become a bureaucratic environment is the worst thing. I think you need to build from the bottom up, and you build up credibility and constancy, and then you overlay that with in a bigger successful project with a formal relationship in your company. And that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you, David. I'm going to stay with you actually, because I want to stay on this topic of the ESG, because I was party to a kind of extraordinary conversation from, well, we've seen a lot of generalists moving into the mining space as they see the prices rise and opportunities set in front of them. And the statement and conversation went up something along the lines of, why should we care about local and indigenous populations and treat them with kid gloves? We're giving them jobs, we're giving them money to put food on the table. They should be grateful. What do you think of that statement?
Well, I disagree with that statement completely. I've heard it from one of my associates, and I pretty much cut him off at the knees when he talks like that. I think that's exactly the ugly American attitude, and well, it just is. It's preposterous. I'd like to point out that we're all from the same area 2 million years ago in Africa, right? So we're all in this together. It's always been that way. 2 million years, as we know as geologists, is nothing. So this idea that there's some preferred group that deserves some control is ridiculous, to be blunt. However, having said it, and I should point out that the mother culture of Mexico comes of all of Mesoamerica is from Mexico, the Olmec culture, going back to about 2500 BC. So everything has sprung from Mexico and spread throughout North and South America. So I think it's extremely important to keep in mind, again, we are guests, respect. I can say at Los Filos, it was a funny thing, just very quick story, and then I'll give up my time. When I worked with Minera Nucay, they had an operating gold mine. They had a very belligerent attitude towards the local people in Guerrero and Mezcala, very belligerent. Starve them, don't give them anything, or try to, negotiate down to the last 5 pesos. And I did the opposite. I looked for any way, no strings attached, I could help out the local people. Anyway, cheap ways, just simple things. Let's buy them a refrigerator because they just got, or 2 refrigerators, one for the school, one for the community building, because they just got electricity. Let's buy them a few refrigerators. Well, shouldn't we have a condition on that? I go, why would we have a condition on that? Let's just do it because we're nice people. Well, we want to show them we support them. They work for us. They're good people. I would buy gifts every year for all my helpers. No strings attached. To me, you do 2 things. You have strings attached agreements, but you should always be trying to demonstrate to the people you really do care. If you care, show them how you care. We're very wealthy. I'm not living on the streets. I have my guitar here as my fallback career. When the market collapses, I practice every day so I can play in the subways.
Well,
but other than that, show everybody respect.
If we need a filler at the end, we'll get you on, okay? Promise. Jean-Marc, just, I mean, answer that question, but answer in the context, or rather the statement that had been made by this kind of rather uncouth group. Put it in context for them. What would it mean if a company did not, engage with ESG practice in terms of their ability to get financed?
Exactly. So much now as we go financing in New York and Toronto, around the world, and in Europe as well. And we have many European investors, and we have all these people that definitely want to see that we engage and work. So if we didn't do that, and if we don't actually follow the policies, you lose the license to operate. You lose the chance to really make a difference. And of course, the projects won't move ahead. When we get capital to deploy, the expectation is that we put it to work. And so we work very much with the communities. And so I think that now it's quite of importance, the scorecard of ESG, the review of all the permits. And sometimes actually in Mexico, there's a bit of a confusion because it seems that in many places in Mexico, the communities do welcome the project. When you go and talk to the people that are working there and living there, they do want it. Sometimes external NGOs, external forces come in and sponsor things that kind of question the ESG. I personally found the companies do embrace and work there. And I think the investors expect it, and the investors won't give the money if they don't see it coming in. So Matthew, it's a really good question, Matthew, that yeah, it's required, and we definitely keep up to date. And anytime we have any news or anything, the investors are constantly calling us to check and see what's going on so we can deploy and make sure we're telling them the truth and they can really get the true what's happening on the ground. Thanks for the question.
I appreciate that, Jean-Marc. Jorge, I want to come to you. It's a similar sort of theme. Mining is not everyone's cup of tea, as we say here in the UK. Not everyone welcomes mining operations in their backyard, and sometimes, groups rise up and rail against it. They're sometimes sponsored by NGOs from abroad. What is the role of ESG in being able, for you as an operator, being able to deal with that?
Yeah, no, it's something that has come up over and over recently. Interestingly, a lot of calls with investors, they've asked that question. The first time they asked that question to me, it actually really took me off guard because, we've talked about it internally. We didn't have a very comprehensive plan. And, I do think that at the moment we're at the very inception of this, but it is going to become something. Going back to the comment that the gentleman you heard for, talking about ESG, it's just going to become a necessity, a part of doing business. Obviously, a very positive thing, but at the end of the day, what I think it is going to become very very crucial is for the companies to also understand how this is going to affect investment. There's funds that have already either internally or because, like, say, if they're a pension fund, they might have a stipulation where the company has to have ESG certification. In the kind of mining that we do, for certain, like if it's coal, iron ore, there's funds that won't be able to invest in the commodity, let alone the ESG. So I think as an industry, we need to really think ahead and really understand. Present ourselves better. In the case of Mexico, silver actually takes a crucial role in the electrical car revolution. It's a big component for solar panels. Silver, because it's mostly mined underground, and because it's it's high grade in Mexico. So there's a lot of ways that we can present the industry. There's already some benefits to the environment just by virtue of mining in Mexico. And then obviously not so relevant for us in exploration, but for the producers, making a concerted effort to one thing I'll tell you, Matthew, that's been great in Mexico over the last few years is electricity. With the regime that we had before, the companies would come and build you a solar panel at no cost to the mining company because they could then sell that energy to the grid. So that all of that becomes very important, and I think we need to really think, forget about the social responsibility aspect of it, but from a business point of view, it's going to become absolutely crucial, because don't be surprised if with everything that's happening in the US with the Green New Deal, we are in a situation where you might not be able to access capital if you don't have certain ESG certifications and certain, certain requirements in your company.
Okay, I can see that. Alberto, talk to me about ESG. Dave Jones says it's about attitude. It's got to cascade throughout the organization and everything that you do. That's easier said than done. So how do you do it?
I agree. It's not easy. It's easier in a smaller organization like us in an exploration company. As you get larger, obviously it gets more difficult. It takes a lot of internal communication, but really about the higher management really showing that commitment. It all starts with purpose. And just going back also on some of the comments on how do you do it, and I think I'll go back again because I think it's crucial that exploration companies, to implement ESG, have to make that part of the business as important as the mineral exploration. So we really have to expand the scope of our exploration and also start looking into those other aspects. It doesn't mean that it's going to cost a lot of money. It really is not that much, but you have to be systematic. You have to be systematic from the start. So it starts with purpose. How do you do it? Empathy, it's a big, important word here as well. You have to go in, get to know who your neighbors are, what they do, what's important to them. Because it's very arrogant to show up and say, look, I'm going to bring a lot of jobs and a lot of benefit into this area, and you have to love me because of that, and you have to accept me. It just doesn't work that way, especially with cultures as strong as they are in Mexico, where relationships are important, where friendship is important. We have to take this into account. So exploration has to expand to not only looking at the rocks, but looking at the people, looking at the environment, looking at government, and putting all of that into a system. It has to be systematic. Just as we have QA, QC for our lab samples, we need to have our QA, QC, our records for our interactions with society. And that has to be presented also to government if we're going to develop a mine, to maybe another company if we're being bought out. We should have these records very clearly stated and not just be some anecdote.
Well, that's the thing. I think for some people, they talk the language where it appears slightly optional as to whether they do it or when they choose to start doing it. And it's a page on the PowerPoint. I think for others, it needs to be endemic throughout the organization. Robert, you're an explorer. Is it optional as to when you start?
I think these days that ESG and ESG protocols, they're not just a Mexican thing or not just a Canadian thing. I mean, it really is a worldwide attitude or how you approach your business. I mean, I think there can be easy steps in terms of starting, and really a lot of it is keeping your ear to the ground and keeping your presence very local, and get the proper input from various locals, and whether it be the ejido or just individuals within the community. And I think that's how it starts. You don't necessarily have to take a package of ESG that was developed somewhere else, that you may have worked at one point, but it can be a very organic and interactive process, and it can develop as people become aware of each other, and as you become aware, as a company become aware of the local community, and as the local community becomes aware of you. Of course, you will borrow experiences or protocols that have worked in other jurisdictions that you've operated in, but I think it can start right from the get-go with your initial interactions with the local populations, and particularly making sure that you hire locally, and that the face of your organization is basically local. And I think that becomes a very good way. And as I said, then it just develops as you move forward, and you become aware of your responsibilities as you move forward, and you hope that you don't miss anything. And you have to be aware of that as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Doug, you've moved to live in Mexico. You obviously felt that was necessary for the business. Has it enabled you to have better relationships in country?
I mean, part and partial. It was easy to make a choice to be down here with travel restrictions, with need to be on the project. When we got hired to begin work here, and this is after having worked in a number of places in Mexico, the first person that I phoned was someone that I'd worked with for, I got company permission to get nationals, guys in the country to work with us. And it steps back to what is a business? And a business is built up of assets and liabilities. And what are your liabilities? Your liabilities are financial liabilities, your liabilities are environmental liabilities, and your liabilities are social liabilities. And you can pay this lip service, but ESG, as Rob highlighted, is very dynamic in how it starts and what it means growing in the business. And ESG has these financial components to it, as Jorge brought up, that you have funds that won't look at you whether you have certain certifications, you have just entire financial communities that won't even begin to approach you. But if you just have this lip service, one PowerPoint slide, and you're not having this effective change on the ground with the face of the company, the crew being mostly local, you lose that, or you begin to increase those liabilities, which then affect your business case. You know, what do? You table your assets against your liabilities. You can have great assets in Mexico that are, as we've all highlighted, have tremendous potential, but then you have these increasing liabilities that if you're not paying attention to that ESG, it's right there. It affects your business case for operating in Mexico. And those responsible business development and sustainable business development is implemented at the beginning of any project. And it's very hard to just go and start to do it when you're way ahead. So while yes, I by being in Mexico, I have a hands-on approach, and I'm able to go speak directly to a community. I think it's also important to recognize that having the right people in place in the team that are being that face of the company to speak with those communities is equally, if not more important than me, some Canadian living in Zacatecas.
Good. I'm glad you said that. Okay. There's got to be some stories out here, guys, because I want to address, again, that comment from that group talking about, you know, we're doing them a favor kind of attitude, which you know, just stinks on every level. There's got to be some stories. I'm going to go to Dave Jones. What happens when companies get it wrong with their ESG in Mexico?
Well, I can give you, it's a great segue. Back in the Filos days, we had a sister company who I will not name, and they were a Mexican national mining company. They were extremely belligerent with the community. We were the opposite. They loved us. They didn't like our sister company. And it got so bad that after there was an accident where incredibly 17 people died in a single truck accident. Some of you may remember that. A mining truck went down at the end of the day and went off the road. 17 people died in a single accident. So what did the mine do? The mine did nothing. And they fought trying to pay death benefits. What I did was I asked one of my geologists, what do people do here when somebody dies? And they said, well, a nice thing to do is do a corona with flowers with the person's name. Now in the United States, that would seem kind of tacky because we don't do that. But down there, it's a meaningful gesture. So I ordered with the names of all the 17 people who had died, made up very large flower arrangements, coronas, I think they call them. And I had one of my guys go to every family, deliver the flowers. And I said, you take as much time as you think is right to sit down, talk to the family, commiserate. And it probably took him 2 or 3 days. And maybe $1,000, $2,000 for the flower arrangements. But you know, I didn't do that to pander to the people. I did that because I felt that it was a heartbreaking loss. I couldn't even imagine what it was like to lose a husband, a son. In one family, it was a husband and a son gone. And for people to turn around and say, well, they had lucky they had jobs. And I said, well, how lucky were they when the mine truck went off the road? And it got really, it got very tense between Tech. I was with Tech, between myself, project manager for Tech, and the sister Mexican company. It was an awful situation, but I maintain to this day, treat these people as if they're family. You may not agree, you may get upset, you may not like what they do, they may not treat you with the same respect all the time, but we're all family in this, and we should behave that way. That's how I view it.
So, I mean, that's also a very tragic story you tell. I'm also interested, because I do want to fully answer people like that. I think it needs to be addressed, because I'm sort of disgusted when people say things like that, is what does it mean for the bottom line when companies get it wrong? Because that's when investors start paying attention.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, let's go with you, and then we'll move on to everyone else.
I can very quickly. What goes wrong? Well, everything is an existential threat to your project. I forgot to mention the Mexican mining company. They blockaded the road because of the Mexican sister company. They blockaded it for a week and a half because of that, and we couldn't go to work. And they loved us. We'd go up to this. Can we go? They said, no, we love you guys, but we can't because we have to blockade the road because of your sister company is not behaving well. So it can be everything. When you treat people with a lack of respect, expect to lose everything. Everything. Existential risk.
Right. Okay. Appreciate that, Jorge. Again, your man is on the ground. You know what happens there. I mean, what have you seen when people aren't paying attention to the locals?
Yeah, I mean, I think you tend to see it, sadly more with the larger Mexican-owned companies. I've seen some shocking things that I don't think it would be something that I should necessarily mention here, but it's actually quite depressing, because maybe I'll briefly say something that probably better not say it, but you do see like just complete disregard, sort of similar tone to David Jones's story, where it would just take you nothing to make it better for these people. I focus also on another aspect that, again, Canadians have brought a lot of change to Mexico. There's an aspect of ESG where the entrepreneurial side of being a mining entrepreneur. Mexicans the local people are incredibly entrepreneurial, and as a Mexican, that just really is something that I really like seeing. Just the same way that you have in Canada prospectors, you have Mexican, they call them gambusinos, and they'll go and prospect. But the difference in Canada, you can go to the markets and get funded, and you go to school, become a geologist, or even a prospector who has developed the skill. You can finance your project. That in Mexico just unfortunately does not exist. And the large Mexican mining companies actually take a very aggressive attitude. If the local tries to become very entrepreneurial, they immediately shut you down. If you might have put together a wonderful project, staking properties, using your limited resources to put it together, and then they'll offer you a ridiculous amount of money for it. That kind of thing creates a very negative sense where you don't feel like you have a chance. The average Mexican, and that's a big problem specifically in Mexico, is these oligarchic companies are so strong, and it's not just for mining, it's just in every industry, that people really feel oppressed because they feel like, look, there's just I have all these ideas for a business, and there's no way to get credit, there's no way to get a loan, and not just this goes from people with little resources all the way to the middle class. So it is actually one of the big problems that we have. I think in Canada, North America, it has a different situation, but at the end of the day, it is that lack of opportunity of when you bring a large mining company, it creates a ton of business opportunities, and people are hungry for that. Especially Mexican, it's a young population, very entrepreneurial. And the last thing I said, I'm sorry I went so long, but the most nefarious aspect of this, and especially in mining communities, is if you don't become the source of jobs for these people, there's another company that it's like the FedEx of Mexico, but that's where the opportunities are. And these young people have no choice, because that's the employer they can go to. So very important in Mexico, to be able to create these opportunities so that, mining is actually a very noble profession. And it allows you to earn an honest wage that actually pays remarkably high salaries for Mexico. Remarkably high salaries.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point to make here. The importance of mining for Mexico, and in terms of jobs locally, but also tax and revenues and royalties and so forth. It's very important. But what I'm hearing from you all is that there's a sort of level of dissatisfaction and a sort of a cry for change, certainly from the government. I think there's some happier stories at a local level, for sure. And I think I just want to give you guys the opportunity, and I don't mind if you do talk a little bit longer on this one, which is, what do we investors need to understand about you doing business in Mexico? Because mining's tough. I say to everyone all the time, mining is a tough business wherever it is in the world. There's a lot of variables, a lot of things that can go wrong, and you've got to manage and mitigate those risks, put out small fires every day. But is there anything specific to Mexico which makes it tougher, or is it just mining? I'll put that one to Doug.
There are a number of situations, and like Jorge, and I'm probably the one with the least years of experience at this table working in Mexico. Of course, Alberto and Jorge are from Mexico, and David and John Mark have been working here for a long time. And Robert, you said you've been working with Rayna Silver since 2005, and so my experience has been more than a decade, but still of this group, I'm the young one. And I have seen some very violent things happen, and it's not worth getting into. And what is unique to Mexico is there is this security risk to operating here, and it is very unpredictable, and it is best described as isolated incidents, but that can be very mitigated. You can put yourself in risk, or you can take yourself out of risk. And one thing that Canadian companies have to continuously adhere to is we have to protect our shareholders and our stakeholders' rights. And public companies have regulatory disclosure procedures that don't often align with what the business regime is in Mexico right now. And as Jorge had just said, if we don't succeed, David had said so eloquently that if we don't succeed on the stakeholder engagement, or we don't succeed at the community level, our project can be taken away from us, and then our shareholders' rights aren't protected. And then the stakeholders of the project, the community, their opportunity is then removed. And there is this case, and time again for, as he put, and it's probably the best description, the FedEx or the delivery services of Mexico then come in and offer a incentive or a job. Mining is a highly paid career for people here. It's interesting when you have people working for you and you start to distribute like minor pieces of gear that have come under the logo. It is embraced to receive that like badge of honor of now working for this company and having this establishment, or being part of this establishment in the community, especially if the company has a good name. But it can go sour very, very fast. And as a Canadian company, we have to sometimes operate within those parameters where we can't go into this zone, or we can't travel in this direction, or we can't do this. And that may change quite quickly. That incident, that security risk may happen in a very volatile place. And to mitigate that risk, you have to, be very blunt and observe your protocols. And if you stray from those protocols, that's where incidents happen.
Excellent. Right. And Jean-Marc, I'm going to come to you. In again, same vein, does mining, or having a mining project in Mexico, make it easier or harder to raise money, or because they've been mining for hundreds of years, it's well understood and the risks are just something that you need to manage?
Doug really hit it positively, and today we put out a news release about a transaction we did selling our projects in Canada. It's difficult now for a lot of investors wanting to come to Mexico because of corruption, because of security, because of also this feeling that maybe, although you have a title, maybe something might slow it down or might block it. There have been some high profile projects, Almaden and other companies that have had investors that have committed and believed and been supportive who've now begun to give up. And I've lost over a third of our investment that we've been unable to deploy that we've had for work in Mexico over the last 10 years. Because I think investors feel that if they give you investment, they want to see that money deployed. And so I think investors have now become quite wary of Mexico. I think there's a great hope. I think they do see that mining works. I think we do see that we can rapidly build a project, get it going. We can see companies such as Torex and other groups that have been able to make in places that are quite difficult. And Dave has been sharing some of the stories of working in Iguala and working in these tough regions where you can make it go. The investors that did stick in there have seen great returns. And so I think the greed factor of investors does come to play. They do see it works. But we also see companies, particularly international companies, Canadian companies, uncomfortable with the security and these other challenges, deciding to sell their projects to move and actually become more Canadian once they've worked in Mexico for a while. Mexico doesn't change. It gets difficult. And as Doug commented, it's predictable one day and then another day it's something different. They're isolated incidents. But us as investors see that as something that the company has happened to the company. So I do think, Matthew, that the future can be good, but we all have to keep an open communication and be well prepared. Our investors are a selective group because they do have to see, they don't only have mining risk, but they have these other enterprise risks. But these are true in all over the planet. It's not just Mexico. I've worked in 33 countries. I choose to focus and work in Mexico. I think of all the countries, it is the best one overall. Although currently we have these challenges, long-term, it's a great place to work. And I think investors do see that. And those that do stay make money. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jean-Marc. Alberto, is Jean-Marc right?
Yeah, I think what investors have to look at is the specifics of every company, every region, every project. Even Mexico is not homogeneous, so when you're doing your due diligence, you really have to look at where those companies are working. Is it a safe area? Not just the geology, because geological potential we have all over the country, but is it a safe area to work in? Do they have a friendly state government? Are there other projects that are advancing in that state or that region? And that's really going to give you more certainty as to whether the opportunities can move forward. I certainly think there are states where conditions are better than others. So people have to look at that. And management is also important in Mexico. Make sure that there's a good, strong knowledge of the country, good relationships in the country, because that's really going to facilitate things for companies. And I'll just make a comment too about one of your earlier questions on the consequences of not implementing ESG. Very quickly, you're going to see them because we have tons of examples. They're going to be blockades. They're going to be you not able to put your project into production or not even be able to explore it at all, or to just have these constant disruptions. They could even end up, in the worst of cases, in an operating mine being canceled, or even if we have many of these cases in a region or in a country, it can even turn into a government setting higher taxes or more strict laws, etc. That's the consequence, or the consequences of not being able to implement a strong ESG program within your company. And I think most companies currently understand that, and that's why they implement it from the early beginning.
So I thank you for that. David, here's one for you. Do you think that the Mexican government, with their mining code and the rule of law, should decentralize the control of mining to the municipalities, or is that already in effect?
No, I don't think they should, because for the simple reason that municipal politics, especially in southern Mexico, are sadly highly conflicted, and typically they're dominated by small groups of caciques, whatever business they are in, legal, illegal, otherwise. It's really some of these situations have just gotten to be horrible. And effectively in a lot of these areas, there is a rule of law, But if you were to take the mining, legal federal mining rights and try to put it into the hands of local municipal governments or in some manner, it would probably be the end of any investment in those areas, to be blunt. If I might, I just wanted to add, if I may, something to what everybody just said about investors, because obviously you're here to support investors. So I want to make a quick comment to investors. And that is this: what are the risks in Mexico? I look at it a little bit differently than some people do. And I look at risk reward. You're an investor. Where are you going to put your money? Why in Mexico? Okay, well, here's the thing. Mexico has a huge upside potential. The potential reward is, as I said earlier on, to start out, a 5. What's the risk? Well, the risk is higher than drilling in Nevada. It's higher than drilling in Arizona, or probably in a lot of Canada. I said, but would you rather have a 33% chance at 100? Would you rather have a 100% chance at 33? Well, I think riskers who have the appetite to invest in precious metals have a fairly large appetite for risk. So I'd rather have the 33 or 40, 45, 50% chance at 100. And also one final point along the same thing. Americans, Northern Europeans, as part of our culture, how do you get from point A to point B? A straight line, right? Simple. Point A, interstate highway, jump on the highway, boom, this city to that city, straight line. I try to explain to people who know nothing about working in Latin America. I said, there's no such thing as a straight line in Mexico. You may go A to D, then you may go backwards to A again. You may go back to A 3 times, and then you get to B, C, D. And if your goal is F, you may go back and forth, and you explain this to people. They go, I don't understand that. And I go, well, you know what? I don't really either, but I do. I get it. This is what working in Latin America is like. And I'm sure the Mexican nationals on the panel would agree. It's a complicated, culturally complicated way, and linear thinking does not necessarily get you where you want to be.
Right.
That's for the investors.
That's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for. I want to hear I think tonight has been exceptionally honest. It's less salesy than we normally see at these things. So I think, congratulations to the Mexican Mining Forum for putting this on. I think this will be the best panel out of the entire few days. I'm sure of it.
Would you like us to comment on that?
I think Robert, if I was to call you Roberto, I'm going to make you an honorary Mexican for a second. Robert, you've been there since 2005. So how do you find talking to investors? What do you have to say? You're an exploration company, so you've got a whole bunch of different challenges and therefore, and perception of you. So therefore, how do you have those conversations? What do they sound like?
Well, I think a lot from my end is you're investing in both the project and the people behind the project. And so, the project can speak for itself, and typically with your high grade results or good drill results or whatever other dynamic of how the project moves forward. I think in terms of, the people, that is just as important or more important from the investor's point of view. And I think that's what a lot of investors look like. The people that have been there have done it before, so that they understand, just how to operate within that particular jurisdiction. And so again, that's something that we try to stress with our company. We've got a group of people that have been very successful in Mexico and working in Mexico, for 30 odd years now. And so, in terms of the ESG, we have people that are familiar with how to operate and to work within various communities, how to be proactive within those communities. And so, I mean, that's basically what you how you present it to the investor. That you're placing your bets. Again, it's high risk money often, and it's money that you should never invest unless you can afford to lose. That's that's typically what we tell the investors, particularly in the earlier exploration stage. It's a little bit different as projects move down the road. But yes, you're often investing in the people behind the company that have been there, that have operated in jurisdictions around the company, and can bring that to bear in moving your particular project forward.
Right. So Mexico doesn't cause you any problems. I want to ask one about this recent silver squeeze that's been going on, and I want to see who feels that's something that should be taken seriously or should be ignored, or how it's affecting their behavior, their conversations. So, and there's a few silver people on here tonight. Jorge, what's your take on it?
Well, it was a really interesting. It was a really interesting last few days, and of course we got a lot of calls from investors, and I think it is a real thing. There's the one negative thing is I think all this audience that came in from the GameStop crowd and invested, they got their ass kicked by the market. So that will make them a little bit hesitant. But the interesting thing is there's now a crowd of younger people who have silver in their awareness and are looking into the companies. I think that's very positive. I sitting here in Asia, the conversations with people in terms of like the numbers for silver demand, there's going to be a day of reckoning coming here, because when you talk to the people who are in the bullion and silver business, you can't get your hands on. There's a Kitco store here in Hong Kong. You couldn't get any product until the next I think 4 months, and you have to pay premiums about like 100%. I was also speaking to a gentleman who is the biggest importer of physical silver into India. And, that's saying something. I think India imported last year the equivalent of world production, just I think through a couple of traders. So, I mean, you do the math, right? Silver gets consumed every year for industrial production. Just across the border from where I'm sitting in the city of Shenzhen, is where a lot of that silver goes into making solar panels, making electronics. In India and China, by the way, is also buying record numbers of silver, and then the SLV is buying the equivalent every day of world production. So I mean, the math doesn't add up, and I think the day of reckoning is going to come, the day that all of a sudden either a big car manufacturing or a solar panel producer looks at their supply chain and we might not get enough silver, so let's go and buy all the production from First Majestic or for the next 2 years, or that's the time that's going to that silver squeeze might be able to happen, because it's very tough for retail investors to be able to actually compete, to buy a contract of silver. If you do it through the SLV, it's not really going to happen. I think that physical silver, unless all the retail investors in the US start actually getting physical silver, I think that's not going to happen. But something's going on for sure, and I think for all silver investors, it's very interesting to keep looking at it, and it doesn't take too much effort or intelligence to notice that there's something's off.
Something is off. Jean-Marc, does it make life more difficult for you, or just ignore it and get on with the mining?
I was just pulling up some of my silver coins that I have here. So yeah, we actually we have a lot of silver. We see the value in that silver, and yeah. So but my son actually said, "Dad, I'll sell you all the silver coins you've given me the last 10 years." So he's the young GameStop guy who said, "Wow, silver's going up," and he'd actually been long silver, having held the coins for so long. But yeah, our investors all of a sudden took a huge interest in it. And oddly, we had spun out and worked with Capitan Mining. It's great to work with Alberto that has a very nice silver asset in it. And all of a sudden the phone was ringing and things like that. So yeah, we definitely found it to be a very interesting moment in time, as Jorge mentioned. I don't know if I immediately answered your question because we got overwhelmed with the silver.
You got very overwhelmed. So did I, actually. I do accept payment in silver. That applies to anyone listening. Fantastic. Well, Doug, I mean, talk to me about your views on what's going on in the marketplace. Does that change your attitude? Does it change your behavior? Are you getting asked strange questions? Do you know what's going on?
No, I don't. As the millennial, as the token millennial on the board here, I really did appreciate seeing the amount of generalist investors that this may have been a catalyst for to bring into the market. You know, the precious metal market is tiny in terms of a global investment space. It's a third of the market. All of the precious metal miners added up their market capitalization is a third of the market cap of Apple. So to see us be able to get that, some piece of that, and like Jorge said, you know, get it on the radar, or John Mark said, you know, his son is now trying to do OTC trading here with his silver bullion. The questions that I really got, and I think are really valid questions, are how sustainable is this type of growth in the silver market, and what does that mean for operators, what does that mean for producers, what does that mean for economic studies? And I think the real you know, pragmatist in me, or the realist, is that we do need to see some stability in the silver growth price. And that's a really incredible thing that Jorge had just said about India importing physically the world production in the last, I didn't catch the time frame, but last month, but or however long it was. That's an incredible thing to hear, because that actually almost plays into this whole decentralization question. And then silver is now becoming massively decentralized by having generalist investors, by having world markets open up, by having people recognizing that paper silver, which was the silver squeeze, is actually the more challenging market to play in, and the physical silver is the one to get in, and that demand is at a 10-year high right now, and you can't get your hands on that physical silver. And I did the same thing as John Mark when I was down here, and last time silver was at a high price, I went and bought a whole bunch of silver coins, and I have all these 5-ounce silver coins with the Mexican eagle on them, and they're really beautiful. And I text messaged my old dad, because he was really smart about putting them in a safety deposit box. And I was like, oh yeah, do you still have those silver coins? And his reply was no, in capital letters, I don't have them anymore. So, he's, yeah. But the generalist space is now recognizing this opportunity, and I think that's wonderful for the silver market.
Yeah, well, if you ever do work out what's going on, let me know, because I can't find anyone who's got an answer. But it's slightly, in a way, it's kind of slightly terrifying, because if this is the new way of working, I'm not quite sure what the rules are. David Jones, is the silver market controlled by forces unknown?
Well, Matthew, you asked me if anything strange was going on, and I'll put on my tinfoil. I haven't noticed anything. It's just business.
Is that not silver?
It's been, well, yeah. It's also called aluminum. It's an alchemist. So, but okay, is anything strange going on? I guess I'm going to avoid answering that and instead show you this. We have a project with Minorum Gold. I'm a principal and a director. So this is an 8 real mint condition silver coin from the Alamos Mint that I found on eBay. And I guess this is a way to segue to the point that silver has been important for 150 some odd years and will remain so. And so the nonsense of what goes on the short term, I think, is just a sideshow. And I'd rather watch the, Gone with the Wind than the short version. So I'm going to stick with the long-term reality. 8 reales, ¿verdad? And
I like that. I like that. Robert, what's your take on all of this? Does it matter to you?
I guess when the silver squeeze happened, and seeing the response from the generalists, and particularly the 30-somethings or younger, I was thinking, okay, how do we get a piece of this? How do we get and project out to those people and make them aware of the upside to mineral exploration companies? I still don't have the answer to that. We continue to think about that and continue to try and sort out outreach in that regard. But I do believe, though, that silver is on its way up, just as gold is on its way up. It is a precious metal like gold, and the situation worldwide is likely something that's going to make people revert back to hard assets as opposed to paper assets. And so I think that there is upside in the prices to silver and gold particularly, and that this is an opportunity for people to get in and start investing in exploration companies, development companies, companies like everyone here is involved with, which are still at, if they're not in the basement, they're maybe only on the ground floor or on the first floor. And I think that there is still a tremendous amount of upside in all of these companies, and particularly working in Mexico.
Fantastic. And Alberto, I better finish off with you. Last question of the day. And David quite intelligently avoided it. So are the markets controlled? What can we expect to see from the price of silver going forward?
I don't know if the markets are controlled. won't get into that, but I think the general consensus is that we will see higher silver prices. We're certainly getting more demand, more interest in investing in silver. And does it affect us? Well, of course, we're exploring in Mexico, the #1 producer of silver in the world, that has been for years. So it really is probably the best place in the world to go and invest in silver. That's where you have the highest chance. Now, I think that's, when thinking about that, that's what investors should look into. If they're interested in silver, that Mexico is the place to go for sure. We've been producing silver for over 500 years now. And so certainly longer that we've been minting modern coins, and it's going to continue like that for a long time, I think. So
I think you're right. I think you're right, Alberto. Look, I think we've got to wrap it up there. I'm getting the evil eye from above to move things along and close up. So I'm just going to say thank you very much, all gentlemen, for coming on. I appreciate the sort of non-salesy approach you approach this with. You've given us some real information with which to make real investment decisions. I know we at Crux Investor strive very hard to get that from companies, and I appreciate the honesty and the openness which you came into today's panel.